SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
If you're feeling anxious about your investments with all the economic volatility and chaos in Washington, tune in to SuperTalk Jackson on Wednesdays from 9 to 10 a.m. and Sundays from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. for Element Wealth Radio with Jeremy Nelson. Learn more at myelementwealth.com.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Mississippi.
Everything gonna be all right this morning.
Mornings with Richard Cross.
Oh, yeah.
Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Woo! Now, when I was a young boy, at the age of 5, my mother said I was gonna be the greatest man alive. But now I'm a man.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for starting your day with us. Is this one of those days where you set the alarm for 10 minutes early because you wanted to sit out on the back porch and drink that first cup of coffee because you thought it was going to feel a little bit different this morning? If not today, you might do that tomorrow or later in the week. It's going to be really, really nice for the next few days. Alongside Lance Talbert, who is back. He was back yesterday, but is back after a week off, and I was back after yesterday off, or I am back after yesterday off. We're glad to be with you. And we invite you to join the conversation on the C Spire text line. Thanks to Lucian for sliding in yesterday. Always, I caught a little bit of you guys yesterday, Lance, in the 7 o'clock hour.
I noticed that
as always. Yeah. I did. I sent you a text, and Lucian was like, "That's not Richard, is it?"
I recognize the number because it's like an office number, which is your personal number. You know,
that's right.
I see that. Right. I'm like, oh, that's the real guy there.
That was the benefit of one of my best friends working at a cell phone store about 20-something years ago. I have an easy to use number, easy to remember, and so does his wife, who was his girlfriend at the time, and so does he. So we are within 1,000 each of each other. I'll leave it at that.
It was like, give me one that's simple. I want to remember it forever, and yours fits that.
It does, and with portability of phone numbers, I have no intention of ever letting that one go. So. We will see, but we welcome you to join the conversation on the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. C Spire's been at it for a long time in the state of Mississippi. And before it was C Spire, it was Cellular South, and before that it was Telepac Networks. And
that was like pagers and stuff.
Yeah, they have evolved as a company, and they're doing some cool stuff in the technology space. In the data storage space, and in walking alongside you as a business owner with all of your IT needs. C Spire, their website is cspire.com. C Spire, inspired by you.
I want that Samsung Fold, not the flip.
Yeah.
The Fold one.
I looked at it the other day. I was just curious. You'd been talking about it, and the flip phone is my favorite phone ever.
Oh, of course. Like the Nokia?
All time.
Yeah. My dad still has one. It doesn't work anymore.
The Nokia.
He just gave that thing up not long ago.
Flip.
Yeah, it's like looks like about the color of a hockey puck, and fits in your pocket just right on the front. Yeah, it's had the little antenna, the hard antenna on it. But he still has one of those that we just discontinued a while back, about a year and a half ago, when I was finally talked him into the smartphone. He's like, yeah, I don't know.
That's good progress. Yeah, I was a big fan of the Razr, the Motorola Razr.
I ruined a few of those. Yeah,
those were good.
They were lightweight too. You know, what I mean, they felt like they weren't much of a phone in your pocket as we've gotten and developed. You know, it's more of a computer. But yeah, those Razrs, man, I blew through a few of those things. Yeah, crunch. Whoopsie, I stepped on it.
And it's going to be nice today. Rain showers early in Oxford with some sunshine later in the day. High of 78. Winds light and variable. Chance of rain 60%. And, by the way, I'm just going to give you this just in case you're interested. Forecast for Saturday in Oxford, your game day forecast.
Isn't it something?
Intervals of clouds and sun with a high of 83, 84. Winds out of the northeast. 5 to 10 miles an hour. Rain chances now down around 20%. Starkville, cloudy skies today. Slight chance of a rain shower. High of 76. Winds out of the north-northeast, 5 to 10. Hattiesburg, mostly sunny. It's still warm in South Mississippi. 94 degrees today. Saturday, your game day forecast in the Berg. Overcast. Chance of rain showers. High of 85. That rain chance at about 40%. That's your game day forecast. And Ocean Springs, mainly sunny sky, high of 91, winds out of the east at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Jason in Starkville on the C Spire text line. I bet Lance is really fun in a group text between Android and iPhone users.
Yeah.
You know what? I give him a hard time. He sent me some gobbledygook made-up numbers yesterday about, Android
Made up numbers.
global percentage share, and I was like, well, that's great in Guatemala, but here in the United States, we all want to be blue. We all want to be in blue text bubbles. Here's the only thing, Lance, that, the only legitimate argument that I can make for you. Okay. Of course, you might say the legitimate argument you could make was if you go out and buy me a new iPhone and I'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So I get your texts all the time, but I also have iMessage on my computer. So all of these links that you send me, yes, I can only get on my phone. I can't get them on my computer. And when I'm trying to copy and paste and move stuff around and put a rundown, I can't use any of this.
All right. Well, I'll start emailing to you then.
Oh,
yeah.
Wonderful.
And blow it up. Yeah. Tell us how the camp will be maxed out.
This day in 1743, Antoine Lavoisier was born, known as the father of modern chemistry. So if you are struggling in chemistry right now, whether it's at the junior high, high school, or college level, blame Antoine Lavoisier.
And then take a shot at Crevassier.
Mother Teresa was born on this day in 1910, the Nobel Peace Prize winning humanitarian, an Albanian-born Indian nun, founder of Missions of Charity, won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979. She was born in the Ottoman Empire. 1935, Geraldine Ferraro was born, an American politician, representative from the state of New York. She was a Democrat, served from 1979 until 1985, and was the first female vice presidential nominee. That was back in 1984, alongside Walter Mondale. It did not
What a ticket.
well for them.
Right.
Mondale Ferraro. You've got one of those signs. It's probably a collector's item.
I want the sign and the T-shirt.
The talented, remarkable Branford Marsalis, born on this day in 1960, the jazz saxophonist and composer, former leader, perhaps you remember him from here, of the Tonight Show Band. Jay Leno loved him some Branford Marsalis. Thalia, born in 1971. Who, you might say? Well, the queen of Latin pop, of course. Yeah. Actress and singer. She was born in Mexico City. Born on this day in 1980. Who could forget Macaulay Culkin?
Oh, that guy, man, he printed money there for a bit. Yeah.
Home Alone 2, Home Alone 3, My Girl, tearjerker, Richie Rich.
I like Richie Rich. That was a good one.
Pretty good run for Macaulay Culkin. And look.
He looks, at his age now, he kind of still looks like the kid.
He kind of does.
He's an older version.
I got to go high marks, though, for a movie that has the ability to make me laugh today as much as it did 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. And, brother, when I watch Home Alone, especially with my kids, and I'm not talking about 2 or 3, they're fine, whatever. I'm talking about the original Home Alone. When I watch that with my kids, I nearly fall off the couch laughing.
It doesn't ever get old to me. It's one of those that just never gets old.
I know when they're about to step on the micro machines. I know when the iron is about to splat him in the face. I know when he's about to walk in the saran wrap stretched across the door frame with silicone on it and blow feathers in his face, and when they're going to cut the rope swinging from the house to the treehouse, and all of it.
I love the ice stairs and the iced stairs.
Yes,
with Stern cannot figure him out. Then the burning knob,
the door handle,
the doorknob is you gotta love it. But yeah, I absolutely love the ice stairs. Watching Daniel Stern try to figure it out, and he just can't
do it. Julius Caesar invaded Britain for the first time on this day in 55 BC. About 1,500 years later, Michelangelo was commissioned to sculpt the Pietà. It's in the roof of the Sistine Chapel, 1498, or maybe not in the roof, but part of the Sistine Chapel. Edmund Halley first discovered the comet that is now named after him on this day in 1682. Big day for France in 1789. No, that's not the day they grew a spine. Still waiting on that. They adopted the Declaration of the Rights of Man on this day. 1873, the first free kindergarten in the United States started by Susan Blow, or Blau, B-L-O-W.
Blow. I'm going with Blow.
I thought you might. Carondelet, suburb of St. Louis, Missouri. And on this day in 1920, the 19th Amendment took effect, granting U.S. women the right to vote. C-Spire text line when we come back. Just getting started with you. It's Mornings with Richard Cross. Thanks for being with us.
From the Venable Glass.
Where you're from, Abbeville, Batesville, DeIberville, or any other ville in the SIP, you're starting your day off right. Mornings with Richard Cross. Super Talk, Mississippi.
Sexy things you do.
Today in 1944, the liberation of Paris, French General Clerc's 2nd Armored Division and Charles de Gaulle paraded down the Champs-Élysées in Paris after the liberation of the city from Nazi occupation. Big day in Paris.
Oh, you're crushing that pronunciation there.
Talk really fast. Just go fast and keep moving and hope that no French teachers are listening. Yeah. 1957, the Soviet Union announced successful ICBM tests. ICBM, Intercontinental Ballistic Missiles. It is an acronym that you became very familiar with later in the Cuban Missile Crisis. 1968, Lance, the Beatles rolled out Hey Jude.
Oh, nice.
Hey Jude, released on this day, 1968. 2007, the Rolling Stones closed out their 2-year, 147-concert A Bigger Bang tour. Finished it up at the O2 Arena in London. Box office gross of the tour exceeding $558 million, which at the time was a record. Since been surpassed several times, or at least a couple of times, including by Taylor Swift most recently. But that was in 2007. And it kind of felt like might be the last chance for you to see the Rolling Stones. Who knew that 18 years later, they'd still be going strong?
Yeah. Rockers usually don't have that long of a lifespan when they've partied as much as those guys.
No.
And they are still rolling. They're a great band. I've always been a Stones fan.
Yeah.
And the music is extremely diverse. Love their range. And again, hey, they're still playing, man. I mean, you got to love what you do if you can keep doing it that long.
And they're not just playing the hits. They're still putting out new music. Mm-hmm. 2008, Barack Obama nominated as the first African-American United States presidential candidate. You remember all of the pomp and circumstance surrounding the DNC convention that year. Hey, rip the politics away from it. I don't care who you pull for. The crowds that he was able to draw in the final month of that campaign leading into the election, culminating there at, whatever it's called now. Is it Empower Field still at Mile High? Old Mile High Stadium, new Mile High Stadium in Denver. The backdrop that they built, the crowds that they had, it was incredible. Like, if you are a a builder of political events, they were the most amazing optics you could ever dream of. You could imagine.
Yeah, the planner could have retired after that run. You're saying, yeah, that you're
no
at the
doubt.
top of your game.
No doubt. All right, some news headlines for you this morning. Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College mourning the loss of a football player who was killed in a car accident on Sunday afternoon. 22-year-old Marcus Dickey was a transferred defensive lineman from Nicholls State. He was traveling back from his former school's game. Nicholls State played over the weekend. Headed back to Perkinston for practice on Sunday evening when the crash occurred. Details not yet released. Head coach Jack Wright at MGCCC said he was doing good. He was the kind of kid who was the first one in the meeting, one of the first guys out at practice, one of the hardest workers in the weight room. Always had a big old smile on his face, everything you would want out of a teammate, everything. Dickey, a Mississippi native, standout at Biloxi High, MHSAA 6A All-State first team as a senior back in 2020 in his final season with the Indians. He had 61 tackles, committed to play at Nicholls, spent the 2022 season there on the team's practice squad. 2023, played in 9 games as a redshirt freshman, and was chasing the dream. And the dream came to an end. MGCCC kicks off their season on Thursday. This Thursday, and according to Jack Wright, the team will use the entire season to honor their former teammate and to remember him. Mississippi's plan to... This is a big deal. Mississippi's plan to lease 80% of its public oyster reefs to private companies on pause after a Harrison County judge temporarily blocked the program. That ruling came down about a week ago, August 18th. Chancery Court Judge Jim Persons granted a preliminary injunction halting the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources from issuing new leases while a lawsuit plays out. The order is temporary, meaning that it will keep the program from moving forward until the court ultimately makes a decision. According to Joe Spraggins, the executive director at MDMR, the judge said the program under the Fourth Amendment unconstitutionally restricts leases to Mississippi residents and attempts to regulate activity beyond state waters. Now, celebrating on this issue, the Mississippi Commercial Fisheries United Group. It's a nonprofit group that filed the lawsuit along with a couple of dozen oyster fishermen. And it celebrated the decision on social media, saying that they had won. This has been going on for a while. It's the latest chapter in a months-long debate over how to rebuild reefs devastated by natural and man-made disasters. We're going to come back to this story at the end of the 7 o'clock hour, give you a little more background, a little more detail about where we are right now. But as it stands right now, that leasing plan is on pause. Not on pause. For nearly half a century, the Mississippi Delta Blues and Heritage Festival has been rolling on. This year, the 48th edition, kicking off in Greenville next month. The one-day festival, Saturday, September 20th at the Washington County Convention Center Fairgrounds. Gates open at 10. Music begins at noon. It's considered the oldest continuous running blues festival in these United States of America. This year's event features 14 acts on the main stage, 10 acts on the Juke House stage, spotlighting a trio of former Malaco Records stars. Stop me if you know any of these guys, Lance Tolbert. 3-time Grammy winner Bobby Rush.
Yeah, you got to know about Bobby.
The diva of soul, Shirley Brown.
Oh, yeah.
And the little giant of soul, Willie Clayton.
And I'm not as familiar with Willie Clayton, but the other two, definitely. And Bobby is one of my favorite. And, you know, the guy is just...
We probably need to visit with Bobby.
Golly, man.
It's been a while.
Yeah, he's just such a great guy. I mean, at his age, all that he's accomplished, and still the heart of a soldier out there, and a teacher, too. You know, he's just such a great ambassador for the music and the culture that makes, I think, Mississippi so unique. And he's one of those guys, like Steve Azar, you know, just a absolutely amazing person.
All the festival information, link for tickets, details, lineups, times, regulations, all that good stuff. Part of the news story at supertalk.fm. Just click on the news tab. You can scroll down and find that and read all about it. Coming up, what did I say, the 20th? Yeah, September 20th. So a little less than a month away. This one's going to make your stomach turn just a little bit. Former Tennessee basketball coach, I should say state of Tennessee, not University of. Former basketball coach in the state of Tennessee has been sentenced to prison for transporting a minor for sexual activity in Mississippi. According to an announcement by the U.S. Attorney's Office, Northern District of Mississippi, Andreas Shannon was sentenced to 12 years in prison for traveling in interstate commerce to engage in sexual activity with a minor, under 16, and later stalking the minor after she turned 18. Court documents show that Shannon, 44 years old, was a basketball coach for a Memphis area homeschool association. He used his position to groom and earn the trust of both parents and players, including a minor female basketball player, until such time as he was trusted to give the player rides to practice, rides to scrimmage in Mississippi and Tennessee. An announcement reads, over several years, Shannon sexually exploited the minor at his home in Memphis, gyms across Mississippi and Tennessee, his rental property in Tennessee. When the player turned 18, Shannon began a campaign of cyber stalking when the player attempted to break up with him. He also threatened to release sexually explicit images of the player in order to extort her into continuing a sexual relationship. These actions continued for 2 years. Chief District Judge Deborah Brown said, go to jail, man, for 12 years. And we're going to pop 5 years of supervised release on you at the end. He's got to register as a sex offender. After being released from prison, the investigation led by the FBI with assistance from Memphis and Olive Branch police departments. Assistant U.S. Attorney Parker King prosecuted the case as part of the Project Safe Childhood Initiative, a Department of Justice effort to combat the growing epidemic of child sexual exploitation and abuse. Hope nothing uncomfortable happens to him while he's in prison.
Yeah.
Would just absolutely hate for that to be the case. Those are your news headlines. We will get to some sports headlines when we come back. Mornings with Richard Cross with you. Super Talk Mississippi, streaming supertalk.fm, SuperTalk TV, on the app. We're everywhere, and we're glad to be with you.
From the Seabrook Paint.
None of the important stuff.
Your VIP pass to hear what the most influential Mississippians are talking about.
This is very important. Huge news.
Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi.
Lord, I think I'll go back over yonder, baby.
65 degrees outside the North Mississippi Bureau of Mornings with Richard Cross. 72 degrees in the state capital where Lance resides. This morning we are glad to be with you.
Hey,
Thanks
bud.
for joining us.
I'm sorry, I didn't know this, but
Yeah?
Ed, thank you from New Hope. Today is National Hot Dog Day.
No,
That's what it says.
no, it doesn't.
It says today is National Hot Dog Day.
Read it one
National
more time,
Dog
brother.
Day.
Read
National-
it one more time.
Man, I'm not reading well. Yeah, National Dog Day. Okay, not hot dog. I was like, where am I going to get a hot dog today? All right. So, yeah, Dog Day. I got a couple of those that need to celebrate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. My selective dyslexia is strong this morning.
What are your dogs' names?
Hawk and Dottie.
Hawk and Dottie.
Yeah. And Hawk got a trip he got to go to Orvis the other day, so we had a big day.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, man. He's stocked up.
We've got Mac and Coco.
Mac and Coco. I've had one of those. Same names. Yeah,
Mac is he's a golden doodle. And golden doodles generally have like this big, boisterous personality and a little hyper.
Yeah.
Not Mac.
He laid back?
Love that dog, but he is skittish. Does not like boys.
Doesn't like boys.
I'm telling you, he does not like men and boys. Probably took him 6 months to really warm up to me and to Obi.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, nope. Jane takes him to the store just about every day. If a man walks in, he either barks at him or he scampers away.
And what kind of doodle is it?
Golden.
Golden doodle, yeah. Brandy, my sister, has
sweet
Labradoodle. Man, I love Leo. They're so sweet, and they don't shed.
Yeah, no, neither of our dogs. So we've got a golden doodle and a Cavapoo.
A Cavapoo?
Yeah. Cavalier, King Charles, and Poodle mix.
Okay. Yeah, I see that now.
That's Coco.
You got some fur on these babies.
Yeah.
Hawk
but
is a
neither
little,
shed.
Yeah. Now Hawk, he's a short-haired pointer, so he sheds a little bit, not too much, just little bitty hairs. But the lab, it's like she has a whole field of cotton under her outer coat, which is a fox red, beautiful. But yeah, the undercoat. I don't see how she does it, man. I mean, there's so much hair.
It should be hot all the time.
Oh my God! But she's the sweetest thing, always smiling at you, and such a rascal, and loves playing. You got to have two of them. It's like they keep themselves busy. It's like two cats. They love eyeballing each other. You spend about half a day, eyeballing.
David Tupelo says, Richard, we've got a Bichon that dog doesn't like boys either. Very snappy with them. CC said, my Pomeranian got very hot yesterday chasing a ball. I guess that made him a hot dog.
There we go. Thank you. Exactly. We had a mini Pom that was named Rocky, and that guy was a dude, man. I love that Pomeranian. He was real possessive too. He was a great guard dog, but he was about as big as a shoe. He thought he was a lot bigger than that. Grew up breeding beagles and black labs and chocolate labs, so I was always around dogs. My grandfather was a big bird dog.
Somebody's got us an AI-generated logo, either ChatGPT or Grok. Richard Cross in the mornings, SBC Free Zone. Love it. Good morning, Marigold. That's from Amanda in Pike County. What a good-looking dog that is. We got Rosie and Junebug in here also.
I always loved the names my dad would give the beagles. We always had about 10 or 12 for running deer and rabbits and such. And one of them was fairly long-haired. His name was Hippie. And Dad would always come up with the greatest names for the dogs, So I learned being around dog people. You always had to have a good name.
Something tells me we're about to get a lot of dog pictures.
Yeah, good.
That's all right. We welcome them. But right now, we want to give you some sports headlines, your morning sports headlines, brought to you by Pearl River Resort, my favorite time of the year, which happens to be the time of the year that I have the least amount of time, but my favorite time of the year to play golf is in the fall. Weather like what we're going to have today, highs in the 70s, overnight lows in the 50s. That's the time to be on the golf course. You get to a point where there's just a little bit of nip in the air. Nowhere would you rather be on the golf course than at Dancing Rabbit Golf Club. Not one, but two 18-hole championship courses, the Oaks and the Azaleas. Generally, there is a special going on where you can place a bet in the sports book and get a really, really discounted rate of golf. And you got a chance to win your bet. It's like the biggest win-win ever. Check them out for the specials that they've got going on right now. Book your tee time online at DancingRabbitGolf.com. Dancing Rabbit, part of Pearl River Resort. High school football finally here. SuperTalk Mississippi Media has you covered. Starting this Friday, the 29th, we will broadcast 19 games each week across our radio stations. After the action, the statewide Mississippi Farm Bureau Insurance Company's high school scoreboard show begins year
30.
30. This is 30. I thought it was, but I didn't want to. I was going to say 30.
I had that conversation with Dixon yesterday, and he goes, it was Paul. It's all Paul's fault. I said, he's sitting up there laughing at us right now. Yeah,
Recaps,
30 years.
Analysis, interviews with players and coaches from the top games. This year, across SuperTalk Mississippi's stations, we will have for you Brookhaven, Clarkdale, Corinth, Gulfport, Indianola Academy, Lafayette, Lloyd Star, Magnolia Heights, Ocean Springs, North Pike, Pillow, Petal, Senatobia, Starkville Academy and High, Tupelo Christian, Water Valley, and the Jones County Game of the Week.
Those are always awesome. I love the Jones County Game of the Week.
Yeah.
Caleb down there running around.
Lance sitting in that chair, taking your calls, directing traffic. You are doing that again, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll be actually in the host seat, and Caleb Sailors, he runs the board, and we'll have Butch Hammock and Keith with us, and so we'll have a nice foursome in here, have a lot of fun.
Outstanding.
Cover them all, man.
A tradition. I know it's what Augustus says, but the Mississippi Farm Bureau Insurance Company Scoreboard Show, a tradition unlike any other.
Well, and we appreciate the longevity of this baby. It's an honor to get to sit here and do it.
Well, you don't get to be a tradition unlike any other.
That's right.
It hasn't been going for a long time.
And there's so much change, constantly. And
you know one of the legends of that show, don't you?
What's that?
Me.
Oh yeah. Did you host it?
No. I was calling in. I was. This was 2002, 3, 4 ish. And I was driving from a high school game that I had done that night to Auburn, I think. And while on the air with Dixon and the gang doing the report, I hit a deer.
Oh, man.
Driving down, I was headed east on I-20, clipping along. Bam! Smoked a deer on the interstate.
Did you field dress it?
No profanity. No wreck, thankfully. No issue. I was like, guys? They're like, what was that? It's like, I think I just hit a deer. I need to call you back.
Man. That'll throw a monkey wrench in your drive, won't it?
Finally here, first game week of the 2025 football season. Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin hosting Georgia State on Saturday. Season opener comes against an unfamiliar foe. First ever meeting between the Rebels and the Panthers. Game is at 6:45 on Saturday night inside Vaught Hemingway Stadium. Fans asked to wear white. Will be televised on the SEC network. Last year, Georgia State just 3-9 overall. One of those three wins was against a pretty good Vanderbilt team that was bowl eligible a season ago. Austin Sims making his first start, replacing Jackson Dart, grabbing many of the headlines. How's it going to look for him in his starting debut in Oxford? Wide receiver, one of the transfers, Harrison Wallace III. Ole Miss has reloaded that wide receiver room. Who's going to be the first one to have a big day? Will it be a guy named Wallace or a guy named Stribling, or could it be Caden Lee, or maybe somebody else? And if you thought you were done pronouncing the name Umanmielen, think again. Princely has gone on to the NFL. Now it's Prince Wells' turn. The new number 1 on the Rebel defense have as big an impact as Big Brother did.
Well, let's hope.
We will wait and see. Mississippi State added 65 new players over the past offseason, 37 from the transfer portal, 9 from junior college, 19 true freshmen. However, 11 of 12 starters are back, if you include Blake Shapen. Southern Miss going to have a new roster as well, starting with its new head coach, Charles Huff. He brought 21 of his former Marshall players with him to Southern Miss, a total of 65 four-year transfers on this season's Southern Miss roster. Jeff Levy says the new coach and new players, there's a lot to prepare for, a lot you don't know. And he said, I love this, you try not to chase ghosts, but at the end of the day, there's some unknowns out there. So you're trying to prepare for everything as we get ready for it, not knowing exactly what it will look like on the other side of the ball. The way you do that is make it really simple on both sides of the ball. Go play fast and free and have fun. That's your sports update brought to you by Pearl River Resort.
From the Venable Glass Track.
Wake up. Get up and start your day right with Mornings with Richard Cross here on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Lance, I think I can make you laugh because real life is funny sometimes. It's time for your Mississippi Lottery update, brought to you by the Mississippi Lottery, online, mslottery.com. Last night I picked my daughter up from dance practice and brought her home, and it was getting on over pretty close to 9 o'clock. It was about 8:45. And Jane was talking to me about something. She was looking at some flight times for something we were planning kind of down the line for kids and family and trying to figure out what made the most sense and whether it was a long enough layover and whatever. And I was like, hey, I'll be back in just a second. She's like, where are you going? We're in the middle of, I need your help with this. I'm like, babe, it is 8:51. I have 9 minutes before they cut off sales of Powerball tickets.
There you go.
She said, are you seriously? I said, babe, I am trying to render this conversation useless. We won't need plane tickets.
Yeah, we'll just buy
We
the plane.
will fly private to whatever trip it is that we're going on.
Oh, how funny.
And so I jumped in the car and zipped up to Double Quick and contributed to the growth of the pot for this coming drawing, because last night there was no jackpot winner. 16, 19, 34, 37, 64, Powerball at 22, Power Play multiplier was 3. Nobody had that exact combination. And so the jackpot grows to $815 million with an estimated cash value of $367.9 million. And this is actually where it gets really fun. Because, you go back to when the jackpot starts out and it's at $20 million and it goes to $22 million and to $25 million. And it's like really slow. It takes a while to grow. Once you get to this kind of number, the level of interest gets so big. That thing jumped $65 million from one drawing to the next, from $750 to $815. Nobody wins it on Saturday. That thing's going to be knocking on the door at $900 million. It's already the 8th largest jackpot in Powerball history.
Well, at least you can, break up another conversation tonight at about 8:15 and take off and go get you another Powerball ticket.
Not tonight. Not tonight. Got a break tonight.
Yeah.
Tonight I was going to do it. It'd be for Mega Millions.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right.
Which is growing. Right. It's growing. Mega Millions is it's up to $253 million. Said differently, $250 million. But also said differently, the Powerball more than $750 million in terms of the jackpot right now. So that's your Mississippi Lottery update, mslottery.com, mslottery.com. For me, the bad news, didn't win last night. Good news is, neither did anybody else. Not that I'm cheering against you.
Oh, I would be, yeah. I mean, if you invest in it, you might as well cheer against your competition.
We were talking about Southern Miss a little bit before the break. 45-10 all-time in season openers. Season openers in Hattiesburg.
That's a pretty good start there.
Including 2 in a row. Southern Miss will play 7 home games this year for the first time since 2020 and only the 3rd time in school history.
You got 3 openers, too. I mean, you got State, Jackson State, and App State all in Hattiesburg.
Yes.
Good little run there.
And should be 3 good wins of 3 good crowds.
Yeah.
Got to support them. Southern Miss has 4 all-time season opening wins against current members of the Southeastern Conference. First one came in 1953, a 25-19 win over Alabama in Montgomery. Second one came a year later, a 7-2 victory over Bama, also in Montgomery. In 1996, if you see a theme here, an 11-7 win over Georgia in Athens between the hedges.
There's some nasty bunch defense going on there.
Man, I'm just putting two and two together here. I wonder if there was some voodoo left for taking the hedges out for the Olympics.
It may have been.
Wait, hold on a second. It was the World Cup in '94 when Sanford Stadium, not the Olympics. Never mind. So that doesn't compute. Oh, and then finally, 2016. Wasn't that long ago. 44-35 over Kentucky in Lexington. Never has Southern Miss had a win to start the season against an SEC team in its home stadium. Will that happen this year? We shall see. Oh, great. Just what we want. College football season about to begin, and what do we have? We've got a carriage agreement dispute. This time it's between Fox and YouTube TV.
Great.
They don't come to an agreement by 5 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. You will not get Fox channels on your YouTube TV going into baseball. That means Fox, FS1, Big Ten Network. That means Auburn, Baylor, Friday night. That means Texas, Ohio State, Saturday. You know what else it means? It means I won't be with YouTube TV if they don't get that fixed. We'll be back. News is next.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, and callers on this show are not the opinions of TeleSouth Communications, its management, or advertisers.
It's happening. You're waking up to what's happening. Mornings with Richard Cross. Right now on Super Talk, Mississippi.
O'clock hour. Glad to have you along. You're starting around a little bit, getting out of the house, getting kids to school, headed to the office, in line for coffee, whatever it is that you are doing this morning. Maybe you're headed to the golf course. Maybe you're going fishing. Maybe you're getting ready to cut grass. However you are listening, we appreciate you being along for the ride. Whether it's on your local SuperTalk Mississippi radio station, 12 of those sticks across the entire state of Mississippi, covering all 82 counties. Maybe you're listening online at supertalk.fm. Maybe it's on the app. However or wherever, we appreciate you being part of the conversation. Best way for you to do that on the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395, 601-879-4395. So much going on with our friends at C Spire. Best in wireless with nationwide 5G coverage. Best in home internet, gigabit and more, fiber to the home. It's like a blowtorch of internet coming straight into your house through a fiber line that's about the size of a string of fishing line. That's protected by a little bit more than that, but that's about the size of the fiber. Just a thread. And, of course, the best in IT services. Check them out online. cspire.com. C Spire, inspired by you. This hour of Mornings with Richard Cross brought to you by MWG Employer Services. Running a business is tough, and if you're struggling with HR benefits and payroll, you're not alone. That's where MWG Employer Services comes in. They've got all the services that you need, perhaps more than you can think of, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's a custom plan just for you and your HR team to make sure that you, as an employer, are doing what you're supposed to do, and your employees are getting what they need. To learn more, go to their website, mwgemployerservices.com, or give them a call, 601-206-7966. I understand that this story does not resonate with the entire state of Mississippi, but it does resonate with a bunch of us. I also understand that your phone was probably not buzzing on Sunday night. What's going on? What happened? The way mine was. But because of the relationship that we have had with our friends at Link in the Golden Triangle, and quite frankly, because of the relationship that I and we have had with Link's longtime executive director, Joe Max Higgins, we were all surprised, to say the least, on Sunday night when it became evident that Joe Max Higgins was no longer going to be the leader of that organization. Now, to this point, we're still a little short on facts. Link announced on Sunday, which is really, really odd timing for an announcement, that Joe Max Higgins was going to be departing Golden Triangle Link. And in a statement, the executive committee determined, quote, a leadership transition is in the best long-term interest of the organization and the region we serve, close quote. Also in the release, the Link remains committed to building on recent successes, advancing major projects, and continuing to position our region as a leader in regional growth. We deeply value the ongoing support and partnership of our stakeholders as we move forward, close quote. If you've listened to this program, if you've listened to Super Talk Mississippi, if you've followed the news economically in the state, you know how vibrant the Golden Triangle has become in recent years as an economic development hub. Started with the helicopter manufacturing facility. And then you move to the, and I'm not going to have these in the exact proper order, but the steel mill and PACCAR and all of the aluminum mill, the projects that are so massive in scope, more than $10 billion in economic development for the Golden Triangle region under the leadership of Joe Max Higgins. So I know the question you want answered. What happened? Why? This doesn't make any sense. I didn't mention the tire factory, Yokohama. And I would agree with you. It doesn't make any sense on the surface. We are left with the question of why. I hope that we get the answer to that question. I talked to a lot of people in the last couple of days trying to figure out what's going on, see what details we can gather. The most recent information that I have gotten is that Link has a very good idea of who its interim director is going to be. They are about to begin a national search for the new executive director, and that Joe Max Higgins is going to kind of ride off into retirement and just kind of exit stage left. And all of those things are fine. We had a quote yesterday from Bill Cork in which he said this appears to be a local HR matter and decision by the Link board. MDA works with various communities through personnel transitions all the time, and we will work with Link through this one. I personally wish Joe Max the best in his future endeavors and hope to hear from him soon. And the beginning of that quote, if you want to read it, you can on supertalk.fm, was I just found out about it today like everyone else, and I'm totally surprised by it. I tried to reach out to Joe Max, but got no response. That was from Bill Cork, the executive director at MDA. And that was a quote that he gave us on Sunday night that you may have read yesterday morning. And so, like I said, it sounds like the developments are they figured out who they're going to use as the interim executive director. There's going to be a national search. There's a very real focus on continuing the momentum. But that still doesn't answer the question, why? What happened? And you would be right to a certain degree if you said, well, it's none of your business. I disagree. Now, on the level of personnel matters are protected, it's an HR issue. You don't want to dig too deep into what might or might not be going within somebody's family. This should be private. I agree. Like people should be entitled to some privacy. But I disagree in this particular instance. Because Joe Max Higgins was a cult of personality. Have you ever listened to his conversations on the radio with me? And by the way, I've never had a negative experience with Joe Max. I'm a fan of his. I only know him on a professional level. I don't think that I know anybody that is currently on the Link board. It's possible that I've met somebody along the way, but like if you're just like, hey, who are the board members at Link? I can't tell you that. And so I don't know the personality of that board. I don't know the makeup of that board. I don't know the internal relationship between that board and its leadership. What I do know is sometimes big personalities clash. Is that what happened? Again, I don't know. And so when you said just a second ago that, or when I said just a second ago, well, maybe privacy should be work at, I think we probably need some answers. And we're going to try to continue to get those. I communicated with Joe Max earlier this week. He said, asked if he could talk. Said not right now, but soon. And he said he would tell his story on the radio. I'm going to do everything I can to hold him to that. Hopefully, that will happen later this week. I will say this right now to the board members at Link. You have an open invitation as well. You know what Grandpa said, don't you, Lance?
Mm-hmm.
3 sides to every story?
Yeah.
There may only be 2 people involved, but there are usually 3 sides to every story. What I do know is one of the greatest economic developers in Mississippi is no longer employed with a regional agency that transformed a 3-county region in Link. All right, Professor Glenn Antizzo will join us coming up next. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
From the Venable Glass Trap.
Waking up Mississippi. From South Haven to Scuba, it's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome again. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. Thanks for joining us. ceasefire text line open, 601-879-4395. Quick reminder, Sports Talk Mississippi will be in Oxford on Thursday. College Corner off Sisk Avenue in the Oxford Commons. Get all your game day gear for the kickoff of the college football season, plus great deals throughout the store. Your home for all the Rebel gear is College Corner in Oxford in the Oxford Commons, just off of Sisk Avenue. Bet they saw a lot of white shirts before the first game. That's the color that you're supposed to wear to the season opener.
I'd have it ruined 10 minutes after I purchase it, probably, if it's white.
Coffee, Coke,
whatever.
Something.
Yeah, it's going to be ruined, especially if you want to look
Grass
good
stain.
at a football game. Yeah, ruined.
Professor Glenn Antizzo joins us this morning. He is professor of political science at Mississippi College, and we always enjoy the conversations. And Professor, sometimes you just get a gift that has a big old bow set right in the middle of your lap. I cannot imagine a better debate to start the new semester than a good old constitutional crisis about flag burning. What does the Supreme Court say? What does the president say with this executive order what is free speech? What is inciting of riots? Surely that is a topic that you will be broaching soon with your students.
Yeah, I'm more of an international guy, but this stuff does come up in class, and while I teach at a fairly conservative university, I think there will be issues about whether or not freedom of speech rather allows for obnoxious opinions like burning the flag of your country. Ironically, the people who are protesting the country, and say it's turning into some sort of fascist regime, don't understand that what they're doing wouldn't be allowed in a country that had a fascist regime.
Yes, there is a very real irony there that goes along with that. Is this going to make it to the Supreme Court?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
This court is different than the one in 1989 that sided with those who said that, hey, burning the flag of the United States of America falls under the First Amendment, falls under freedom of speech.
Right.
That was a 5-4 vote. But the guy that Donald Trump so many times has lauded as this great conservative justice, Antonin Scalia, he was actually on the majority opinion saying this is freedom of speech.
Right. Also, if you are Trump, you maybe do want this to go to the Supreme Court so you can get a definitive word on whether or not this is constitutional, because it would allow him to stand on firmer ground on this. And also, even though 3 of the justices were appointed by Trump, they have not always gone along with what he wants. And so, this is really a bit unpredictable. I would imagine that there are probably already 4 votes lined up the other way, the 3 Democratic judges and Chief Justice Roberts. Exactly. And then as far as somebody like Kavanaugh, or Amy Coney Barrett, I'm not sure. It could go either way.
It really is fascinating, and I don't know if we spend enough time talking about the makeup of the Supreme Court, because depending on which team you cheer for, the red team or the blue team, you have a different opinion about this court, right? I mean, if you cheer for the red team, you feel like they're not conservative enough, and they have not done enough to help the president in terms of his agenda and some of these, federal rulings, getting them turned over quickly enough. But if you cheer for the blue team, you think that this court is so far to the right and they're, sending the country straight to hell. Does that mean that the court is actually doing a relatively good job if both sides think that they're way too far one way or the other?
Yeah, no, as a matter of fact, Richard, you anticipated exactly what I was about to say. That, if you are making everybody angry from time to time, you're probably doing the right thing. And one thing that our friends on the left don't seem to acknowledge is that, for the most part, they have 3 reliable votes. The only place where you are seeing any shift back and forth, depending on what the issue is on the right.
Yeah,
they seem to be a bit more open-minded as to what the law should be, rather than sticking to a rather dogmatic ideological position. And the
most reliable one to waffle back and forth is the Chief Justice, John Roberts, right?
Yes.
He tends to side with the left side of the court more than anybody else.
Right. There's we've seen for like the last 40 years that there's always a swing vote. It sort of started with, not Chief Justice, but Justice Sandra O'Connor back in the 1980s, and then it was Anthony Kennedy later. You just see like a swing back and forth, based on whatever the issue is. They are the swing vote, and Roberts seems to have stepped into that position himself, and again, he's not a reliable conservative, but at the same time, he is somebody who will champion a conservative cause when he thinks it's the right thing to do, but will stick with the liberal side if he thinks that's the right thing to do. And you don't generally see that on the other side.
When you think about the makeup of the Supreme Court right now, do you put Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito and Neil Gorsuch consistently together almost every single time and then Ketanji Brown Jackson and Sonia Sotomayor and maybe Elena Kagan consistently together every time,
right.
And then the other three mostly to the, well, I mean, how do you split it up?
No, I think you just did a really good job. I think you're absolutely right. You know, Kagan every now and then is willing to vote with the conservatives, but it's very rare.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. As a matter of fact, not only do I think you're right, I think you actually named them from right to center in the correct order, where it was Alito, Thomas, and Gorsuch. Yeah. And I think, you know, again, Comey Barrett and Kavanaugh, and who am I missing? Roberts are somewhere in the middle, and then you got the three Democrats on the left. I think you nailed it.
Yeah. How long will John Roberts stay in that Chief Justice role?
That is a great question.
Two more decades? Maybe?
You know, he's a young man, and that was something that the Republicans started doing under Reagan. They were looking for, you know, justices to put on the Supreme Court who were ideally in their early to mid 40s, that had a proven track record of conservatism, so that the imprint could be last on the court for decades. Remember, a lot of these people stay on until like their early to mid 80s. So if you appoint somebody, at 40. You could get as many as 4 decades out of him. Yeah, no, I think Roberts is there for as long as he wants to be. It seems like he's in good health. He still, looks, young and fit. So I think he'll be there, at least another decade, if not further. It depends on when he wants to retire. But this is a job that nobody seems to want to retire from.
Dr. Glenn Antizzo, professor of political science at Mississippi College. I love that we can always just kind of have a free-flowing conversation and not necessarily have plans where it's going to go. And I did not anticipate that we would talk this much about the Supreme Court, but I guess one more thought along those lines. I said when Biden was president after Trump's first term that regardless, as a conservative, of how you feel about Donald Trump as president, the lasting impact of his first term would be the 3 people that he put on the Supreme Court. Do you agree with that? Absolutely.
If Trump had done nothing else, I think conservatives would have looked at him as a champion of their cause because he got those on. 1/3 of the Supreme Court is Donald Trump. And it pulled the court, I think, all the way back to the other side for a good long period of time. Trump did a pretty good job of, again, fitting those criteria. Somebody with a proven track record of conservatism and somebody young enough to be on the court for a while. And you got things that conservatives wanted, for example, like the Dobbs decision. And so I think that, he will, for the conservatives in this country, be a champion. If for that reason alone, if you didn't like anything else that Trump did, you probably still like him because he was able to make those changes to that important institution.
We're going to continue the conversation with Glenn Antizzo. A couple of topics I want to get to on the other side of this break. He's a professor of political science at Mississippi College. Did you see the proposal from Donald Trump yesterday to allow 600,000 Chinese students to either come to the United States or continue in the United States for educational purposes? A lot of conservatives are pushing back on that front. And a story from last week, a strange place for the federal government as a shareholder in a company. Is the United States in a good, tenable, strategic position with its stake in Intel, or is this a really bad precedent for the federal government? We'll get into those two stories when we come back with you. It is Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk, Mississippi. You can join the conversation on the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. We're back right after this.
From the Seabrook.
Segment of Mornings with Richard Cross is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Want to know what's happening in Mississippi politics?
Yes.
You're in the right place. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Lance. We're jamming fight songs this time of year. You tell me that the previous one was Cornell?
Of course. That's the guy's undergrad, man.
Yeah.
And I always got to play the Cornell fight song to lead him in.
Go Big Red.
And that was
Ithaca,
MC's
New
there.
York.
MC has a great fight song, actually, Mississippi College. About to be, what's going to be the new name, my man? When is it official?
Mississippi Christian University, and it takes effect, I believe, July of next year. We are celebrating our 200th anniversary in January. The bicentennial celebration is just getting kicked off, and that is the word that we are going to be moving to the name Mississippi Christian University. We feel that it sort of is a statement of who we are. We are proudly from Mississippi, and we are proudly Christian.
Outstanding. I do know that there are people who have kind of longingly thought, hate to see some of the athletic programs, especially football, go away because there's a lot of pride that surrounds that. But you make the decisions you have to make. I mean, higher education is a unique world right now, and there's kind of a figure out how to survive.
I agree, and it was a tough move to make. I know a lot of our alumni are not happy about that, and it does seem to leave a little bit of a void. For example, we're going to have homecoming in October, and I'm not exactly sure what they're going to anchor that to. But at the same time, I would love to see the school. We're Division II right now, but there does seem to be some melt in the Gulf South Conference. They're down to 4 football programs, and Delta State, West Alabama, West Florida, and Valdosta. And there's word that West Florida is looking at moving to Division I. I would love to see, this is just me personally, this is not the school talking, I would love to see the sports that are remaining at MC, which are very competitive now, move to Division I. I think that having a second Division I school without football would be really good for the school. That being on ESPN, my previous employer, Nicholls State University, just had a football game on ESPN2 this weekend. That is publicity that you cannot buy. And so I would love to see that and raise Mississippi College's profile, but we'll see what happens.
Well, Nicholls State, pretty good example of what it looks like sometimes to have an athletics department that is struggling financially, but is still hanging in there and still trying to compete. There are challenges, some of them because of hurricanes in recent years that have really crippled that athletics department's budget. But maybe another conversation. We get the story yesterday or the day before. 600,000 Chinese students at American universities, and Trump says this is a good plan. Howard Lutnick's the one that has to go out and kind of sell this, and he's doing an interview with Laura Ingraham, and she's like, with all due respect, why are we doing this? This isn't what people voted for. And his statement is that President Trump believes that without these 600,000 Chinese students, you lose 15% of your colleges and universities because you just can't fill those slots. There's a lot to unpack here, starting with Chinese nationals coming in and people going, well, they could be spies coming in. That's a lot of students from another country.
Yes, it is. And you want to make sure that they are carefully vetted before they come here because of concerns like that. Originally, in May, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, said that they were going to be aggressively, reviewing and revoking visas for students here that had connections to the Communist Party or were involved in scientific research in sensitive areas as a way of protecting the country and stopping the flow of information out of the United States to Communist China.
And we found some of those, right? There was a doctoral student at Michigan that was sending. I don't remember all the details of the story, but they found some of those instances, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and even if it's a few, I mean, you want to make sure that you are, that you are vetting these people very carefully before you bring them into the United States. I went to school with a lot of Chinese students that were outstanding people. When I was at the University of Georgia, back in the late 1980s, was actually a leader of the anti-government movement here, who was being ratted out by another student to the Chinese consulate in Houston, from what I understand. But again,
wait, anti-Chinese government?
Yeah. He was. This is around the time of Tiananmen Square, and so he was speaking out against the government and got in trouble for that. But again, I would say while you do have a lot of students like him, on the other hand, you don't know who else. And as you pointed out, at a major university like Michigan, that you've got somebody that's passing along stuff to the Chinese government that could help them in ways that it is not in the interest of the United States to help. And the previous high number of students was actually during the first Trump administration. We had in the 2019-2020 academic year, just before COVID, 372,000. So this is a remarkably huge jump in the number of students allowed. I think it was Lutnick who made the argument that if we stop Chinese students from coming to the country, that we're going to be scooping the top 10 or 15% off the best universities in the country, and that we needed these students to fill in some of the lesser schools.
That's not exactly America First argument. No. I mean.
No, it's not. And to be honest, a lot of, I think some of this may be done to help schools maybe balance their budgets at some of these big schools, because foreign students pay full freight to go. They don't get student aid. They'll occasionally get maybe an assistantship at the graduate level, but if they come here, they pay full freight. When I was working earlier, about 10 years ago at MC, we had a lot of foreign students. Particularly, there was a program from Saudi Arabia where the Saudi government would, pay to have their students at their, at American universities. They liked a place like Mississippi College because we are a bit of a conservative institution, though we don't practice the same faith. We do hold a lot of the same values. And they felt comfortable sending their students here. That dried up because of the Saudis trying to put the oil business, the fracking, out of business a number of years ago, and so they changed how that program is set up, and the number of foreign students in this country from Saudi Arabia dried up. So universities are always looking for another source of money. They don't want to raise tuition unless they have to. So foreign students are usually a good source of it.
It is always fascinating to me to hear about the technological advances of China, which are undeniable, about how far ahead Chinese students are than American students writ large. And then I hear that 500,000 Chinese students want to come and study at universities in the United States. I'm like, there's a disconnect here somewhere. So is it spying? Is it that it's so bad, or is it possible that maybe our education system, and maybe you tell me 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4 here, Richard, like that, this is some sort of a false equivalency argument, and I certainly would listen to that, but it's like maybe our education system isn't quite as bad as some people want us to believe. Is that possible?
Richard, once again, you've anticipated what I was about to say. American universities are absolutely, in my opinion, head and shoulders above everybody else. There are isolated good universities around the world, but I think when you look, at and we'll classify this by athletic conference. You look at the Ivy League. You look at the Big Ten. You look at the ACC. You look at the old Pac-12 before it dissolved. You have world-class universities. The genius.
You were missing one in that list.
Yeah, and I have 2 degrees from schools in that, and they are good schools as well. The SEC has got obviously some really good schools as well. I'm very proud of my LSU degree and my University of Georgia degree, but I think at the same
we digress.
but I will, again, I don't think that there is for example, in the in the Big Ten. I'm really hard pressed to think of a school that is not an academic leader that people are, not breaking down the doors to get into. Yeah. And it's just top to bottom, great schools. And here's the great thing. This shows you how forward-thinking America was. When Lincoln was president, they passed something called the Moral Land Grant Act of 1862, and that created universities funded by the sale of public lands that were going to primarily be looking at improving agriculture and things like engineering, the mechanical arts. And these are some of the leading universities in the United States today.
Yeah, there's no question about that. We don't have time to get into the Intel deal. How concerned should we be about federal government taking stakes in private companies?
I think we should be. I think we should be very concerned. It pays off in an emergency. Obviously, the Obama administration bailed out General Motors a number of years ago, but I don't think this is a great idea.
Glenn Antizzo, professor of political science, Mississippi College. Always appreciate the time. Great visit this morning. Thank you,
Richard.
Mornings with Richard Cross continues after this. We'll wrap up the 7 o'clock hour next.
From the Venable Glass Traffic.
Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Welcome to the show.
C-Spire text line, 601-879-4395. That's the number for you to be part of the conversation, like when you have a question. And by the way, I appreciate that this was said in the form of a question and not like a, you scumbag, I can't believe you didn't. It was phrased this way. How do you talk about land grants, ag, and engineering and not hit him with Mississippi State being just that? Hail State. My answer is actually quite simple. Hard time to break, and the clock was ticking. Of course, that's where my mind immediately went as Professor Glenn Antizzo was talking about land-grant universities. I think you might be surprised by who some of the land-grant schools are. So, again, these are schools that were founded and established through the Morrill Act of 1862 and 1890. And there are some schools that you would expect would be part of this, right? Mississippi State is there. If you were guessing, Iowa State might be on the list. University of Nebraska might be a guess that you would make. Kansas State. I mean, for goodness sake, Kansas State and Iowa State just played a football game in Dublin, Ireland this past weekend that is called Farmageddon. It would be a reasonable guess that both of those schools would be land-grant universities. You would guess Texas A&M, and you would be right. But would you guess the University of Georgia? Would you guess the University of Florida? Would you guess the Ohio State University?
And LSU, too.
And LSU.
It seems like the good professor has degrees from Cornell, Louisiana State University, Georgia. Those are all land-grant universities.
Yeah.
Great institutions. Man, it's a who's who list on there.
Would you have the University of Kentucky on that list? Like, it would be easy to say Virginia Tech. But it's interesting. So it's not quite as simple as if you are the University of, you're not, and if you are fill in the blank state university, you are. It's not that simple.
Yeah, and you got a super. I mean, who is the most liberal one on the group, do you think?
Cal Berkeley.
Cal Berkeley. That's an easy
University of California at Berkeley is a land-grant university. How about that? Founded in 1868. The first land-grant university in the state of California and the founding campus of the University of California system, of which UCLA is also a member. Interesting stuff. All right, hey, I promised that we would get back to this story from our news headlines. The oyster reef leasing plan. If you weren't with us earlier, the plan to lease, like rent, 80% of the public oyster reefs to private companies has been put on pause because of a Harrison County judge's decision. Jim Persons granted a preliminary injunction, meaning sit still, the lawsuit's going to be heard, and a court is going to make a decision. The Commercial Fisheries United group went to social media and said, "We won. Today the judge has granted us a preliminary injunction against Mississippi Department of Marine Resources to halt the issuance of leases of oyster reefs under challenge, citing the law as unconstitutional." When you say "we won" in all caps, it makes me think that the game is completely over. More like you're leading at the end of the first quarter, which is a better place to be than trailing. So, how do we get here? What's going on? The leasing plan was finalized in 2024 as part of Mississippi Department of Marine Resources' effort to speed up reef restoration. Storms, wrecks, some things preventable, some things not, including the Bonnie Carey spillway being opened back in 2019, devastated the oyster population along the Mississippi coast. And Department of Resources says, hey, we got to rebuild these reefs. It's going to cost money. It's going to take some careful regulation for how we allow these to be harvested, and we will do that by leasing. Well, now fishermen don't have a voice, according to commercial fisherman John Livings in a meeting with MDMR back in 2024. Said you're giving 100% to the leaseholders, so the fishermen have no voice in it anymore. No more. None. Local officials have pushed back on it, including Representative Mike Ezel from the coast, who issued a statement backing up Judge Persons' decision, says, I support the ruling that protects Mississippi's public oyster reefs from privatization. Our reefs belong to the people, and this decision ensures Gulf Coast oystermen can continue their way of life while preserving our state's maritime heritage. I'm not sure that this was an ill-conceived plan initially. Like, I think the intentions were in the right place, but the execution was not. And so now we will keep an eye on this story. 8 o'clock hour coming up, but the news is next.
Your home. What's happening across your state? Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Glad to be with you on this Tuesday morning, the 26th of August. We're moving closer to the start of the college football season. We're moving closer to cool weather. Got a little bit of a taste of that this morning. Going to be nice throughout most of the week, except for our friends on the coast. When I was kind of going through and looking at the forecast for some different spots, it's like still warm in Hattiesburg. I know that's not Gulf Coast. Still warm in Ocean Springs and Gulfport and Biloxi, and it's going to be for a while. But not bad. Those folks have got it pretty good as well. Lance is in the studio. I'm Richard Cross, and have a guest in studio with me. Lance, first time you've seen this setup. We gave it a little test run last week, and it was okay. Henry Barbour, who is a long-time Politico?
Something like that.
That'd be as good a way to describe it as any. He's worked in politics in Mississippi and at the federal level for a long time. He joins me this morning. Also, professor, teaching in the Lott Institute. Is that right?
Yeah, I have a class. I'm definitely not a professor. I'm a political hack who teaches a class. Chip Picker and I are in about year 13 and teaching this class at the Lott Institute. It's a lot of fun. A great group of kids every semester. So it got me to Oxford.
Not a bad deal. And so I'm glad to have you here. And the reason we wanted to visit this morning, this week marks the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. In fact, we are at this point 3 days shy of landfall 20 years ago. And we were starting to get to the point at this time where people were really, really watching that storm closely, and the evacuation orders were starting to begin, and you were starting to get those messages of, hey, this is serious. Hey, we don't know exactly where it's going to hit yet. It was the coast, it was New Orleans, it was Mobile. But 3 days out, we knew that this one was big, and it had everybody's attention.
Yeah, it had everybody's attention, and it was a big storm. And you're hoping, somewhere at the end it, moves in a different direction than the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Right.
But that's not the way the Lord had it. And, it hammered the coast. And, I think, people who had been through Camille in 1969, many of them felt like, well, if the storm didn't reach me in 69, that's the worst storm ever. I'm going to be okay. And in a lot of ways, Camille killed more people in 2005 than it did in 1969. Wow.
It's kind of a sobering way to look at it. So many stories have emerged from that, and your role largely was in the immediate and then long-term aftermath of kind of rebuilding on the coast and making sure people had what they need. But let's start with kind of when the storm made landfall on August 29th, the things that stand out in your mind in the immediate aftermath of Katrina making landfall.
Just bedlam. People trying to communicate, people trying to reach people. And if you didn't have a satellite phone on the coast, there wasn't any reaching you. One of my favorite stories, and I come at this from a Haley Barbour perspective.
Sure.
Forgive me. But was Marcia, the First Lady. Marcia was adamant that she was going to be on the coast as soon as the first responders. And so she went the night before to Hattiesburg and was there with state troopers and other first responders. And as soon as they got the green light to go down after the storm made landfall that Monday morning, I think about 8 o'clock, she was right down there. And I will say Marcia deserves a lot of credit for being below the radar, but on the coast. I think she was on the coast like 55 out of the first 60 days after the storm. And she wasn't out there like making public speeches. She was going to little communities that were off the beaten path and taking supplies. And then that evening, she's reporting to the governor, this is what you need to know.
I was going to
ask you. These are the people that need things. And Haley, you better get it done. And so Haley's taking notes, basically in the bed to give to his staff the next morning, relaying what Marcia has learned on the ground.
So in a lot of ways, she was his eyes and ears. He obviously had to be in Jackson, kind of in a command center and overseeing response and making sure that the resources were going where they were supposed to. It was going to be impossible for him to do that job from the coast. And so
yeah.
You trust your wife more than anything, and that's your aunt, and you had a front row seat to watch it.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I'm proud of both of them, but Haley gets a lot of credit, and he deserves a lot of credit. I mean, Haley really led after Katrina, and I think the Lord had him there for a reason. In many ways, his career, oddly, as a lobbyist, helped prepare him to do the things that needed to be done to make sure that the coast could rebuild and come back better and stronger than ever. But I'm proud of both of them. They did great things, but in those early days, Richard, I mean, people are trying to survive. They're trying to figure out where can I get a meal? Where can I get water? Where can I get any kind of supplies? And so there is that immediate focus on that. But one of the things Haley did very early on is he talked to Jeb Bush, and the governor of Florida at the time, who had just been through a couple of hurricanes. And Jeb shared a lot of ideas with Haley, and one of which led to this private commission that Haley put together. He picked up the phone and called Jim Barksdale, one of the most effective and accomplished CEOs in the country,
right,
who just happened to live in Jackson, Mississippi, and was retired, and who had been Ronnie Musgrove's biggest financial supporter when Haley took on Musgrove. But nevertheless, Haley picked up the phone and called Jim Barksdale and said, I would like you to chair this recovery commission, whatever we're going to call it. And Barksdale said yes. And what that did, Haley and the government folks were really focused on recovery, the immediate recovery. How do we take care of people? Think first responder kind of reaction. And this private group commission that Jim Barksdale would chair, that Haley asked me to be the executive director for, kind of the day-to-day guy. It was focused on long-term recovery. How do we build back safer? How do we build back better? I'll say, more beautifully. How do we maximize what in many ways was a clean slate on the coast? Because anybody that went to the coast right after Katrina, you were lost. There were no landmarks. You weren't quite sure, am I in Biloxi or am I in Gulfport? I mean, really
and that was the
confusing.
case for people who had spent a lot of time on the coast.
100%. 100%. I mean, you're talking about the surge, particularly in Harrison County and Hancock County, of over 30 feet of water. And that storm was about surge. Camille was about wind.
Right.
This was a slower storm, and so it built, and then when the surge came in, it was moving buildings. It was moving casinos. The casino in Gulfport was sitting in the middle of Highway 49. One of the other casinos ran in to a hotel down in Biloxi and basically destroyed it. It was just floating along. I mean, it's just,
and that was
crazy.
before some of the changes that were made for the way the casinos were allowed to be built. They had to be floating at the time, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah, you had to be on the water. When casinos came along, you were either on the water on the Mississippi River or on the coast. And Haley and others helped persuade the legislature, we got to change that law. We've got to be safe. We're not going to let them move 10 miles inland. They move across the street, across Highway 90. And that's what they did. And I will say that was one of the things that helped make sure that the casinos returned. And the great thing is the casinos did return as we think about economic development and jobs that, clearly were taking a big hit, but it made them safer, made them bigger. So, that's one of the things that happened.
On the other side of the break, I want us to talk some about the Recovery Commission, which you ran on a day-to-day basis, as you pointed out a second ago. Let me ask you this, though, with a minute to go before the break. There's so many positive things that Haley Barbour did in his 2 terms as governor, in the 8 years that he was in that office. Is the Katrina recovery effort the most significant piece of his legacy as governor?
Hands down, no question. It's his finest moment, and I think we needed strong leadership. Louisiana, New Orleans had weak leadership. Haley was the contrast, and I think President Bush had confidence in him, and no doubt it was Haley's finest moment.
You're listening to Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Throughout this week on our show, on Middays with Gerard Gibbert, Good Things with Rebecca Turner, you're going to continue to hear stories about Mississippi 20 years after Hurricane Katrina. Quick time out. We're back with you. More with Henry Barbour right after this.
From the Venable Glass
White House to your hometown. This is where you find out what's happening. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Good to be with you on this Tuesday morning. Thanks for joining us. It is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Much to the dismay of Paul and Brandon, we're not going anywhere, friends. I'll maybe tell you a little bit more about our interaction on the C Spire text line a little bit later. How's that for a tease? Henry Barbour, he's curious now. He's peeking over to try and figure out what that interaction back and forth is. We are glad to be with you this morning, and we are remembering 2 decades later, 20 years removed from landfall of Hurricane Katrina. Happened on August 29th. Today is August 26th, so we're 3 days away from the 20-year birthday, the 20-year anniversary, the 20-year remembrance of that devastating storm that has reshaped coastal Mississippi, the Mississippi Gulf Coast, however you choose to characterize it, and will for, I think, decades to come. Henry Barbour, GOP strategist. He's with Capital Resources. He is the nephew of former Governor Haley Barbour, and played an integral role in the Rebuilding Commission, the Renaissance Commission, the Reconstruction Commission. Call it what you want to. It was the group that began to put the plans together for reimagining coastal Mississippi. And you and I were talking in the break about some of that. One of the most fascinating things you said to me was you got up this morning and started going through some old notes and some old files from 20 years ago, kind of looking at some of the task that was before you. And you told me the first commission meeting happened just a week and a half after the storm made landfall, which is remarkable to me.
Yeah, it was a fast moving ship, that's for sure, and it needed to be. But the first meeting, I went down with Jim Barksdale, who chaired the Recovery Commission, and we met with the mayors of the coastal communities, the mayors that could get there anyway. And we met with the commission leadership, people like Anthony Topazzi, Ricky Matthews, Governor William Winter, Derek Johnson, who is the head of the NAACP across the country. He was the head of the NAACP in Mississippi. And
I'm hearing names that do not all believe the same thing politically.
Yeah, Haley was really adamant that this was going to be a bipartisan, non-political, yet participatory, transparent kind of process. And I remember talking to people like Gerald Blessey, the former Democrat mayor in Biloxi, and I think they weren't sure, necessarily, is this really going to be like Haley is saying? And as the thing got rolling, more and more, I'll say, Democrats on the coast started realizing, okay, Haley Barbour's our guy. I might not agree with everything he does at the legislature, and he's kind of political, but he seems to have this vision that this has got to be driven by locals. It can't be driven by Jackson, and we got to hear from the people. Now, the commission's job, with Jim Barksdale's leadership and others, was to lead with vision, to help set the tone, and so that first meeting that we had with the mayors was mostly about listening to them. And I will tell you, I can still see them. I mean, you can tell they haven't slept in over a week. They've barely eaten. They look like they've been hit by a truck. And there was this guy in there who I didn't know at the time, but he started talking about vision, and it was Ricky Matthews. And he kind of blew me away with some of the ideas and the sort of positivity that he had about him, which anybody who listens to him on the radio, you pick up on pretty quickly. But that was an interesting meeting. We did the helicopter ride up and down the coast looking, and it was devastating, Richard. But under Barksdale's leadership, we started pulling people together, putting plans together. Leland Speed knew an architect named Andre Stwani from Miami, and he's from the School of New Urbanism. They like walkable communities. They designed Seaside.
Okay,
is kind of their, I guess, go-to example of a walkable community. But they wanted to make the coast more like that. And And so they had this thing called a charrette. I had never heard of a charrette. A charrette is basically an architectural planning meeting, and it was for the whole coast, and it was in early October, and we brought in people literally from all over the world to begin to set the tone. We're not just going to rebuild the way it was. Let's think about the opportunities. And I think if you look at places like Bay St. Louis, Ocean Springs, parts of Biloxi, parts of Gulfport, I think you see 20 years later, wow, it did make a difference. And it all goes back to the charrette that was held at the Isle of Capri, which in those days, we stayed there as the hotel. We, of course, called it the Isle of Debris. But it's an interesting time. President Bush came down several times, had great support from him. I will say there were definitely times, though, when Haley had to battle the White House, particularly on housing. Housing was a huge problem. Where are people going to live? I mean, it's going to take well over a year. And they came up with this design. Fred Carl was very involved with this.
Fred Carl of Viking in Greenwood,
Viking.
Right?
That's exactly right. Yes, he was the commission leader on housing, and they came up with this thing called the Katrina Cottage.
Yeah,
and
you still see some of those from time to time. Some have been turned into hunting cabins or been scattered across the state, but it was an actual house. It wasn't a trailer. It wasn't a tent. It wasn't a blue roof. It was a small modular house that there were a bunch of them that were built very, very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and federal government had to be our partner, and Haley was determined to convince them that they needed to partner more than maybe they thought they needed to partner. And he literally had meetings with the Speaker of the House at 1 a.m. And the only reason Haley could do that is he had the relationships, and I think that's why I mentioned earlier, Haley, having been a lobbyist, really helped prepare him for this. He knew how to work with the White House. He knew how to work with Congress, because if we didn't have a federal partner, all the private money wouldn't come. And the key to the whole recovery and having a true renaissance on the coast was private investment, and of course we saw that.
Immediate aftermath, because the commission's doing its work and is taking a long-range view, but there was so much that had to happen immediately. We get this message that says when we got down to the coast 3 or 4 days after the storm for debris removal, our first thought was there were no houses left. The second thought was, where is the debris? It was all piled up against the railroad. Said, I'm going down for a conference this week that's based on the reinvigorated blue economy. It's a direct result of the commission. Big things happening. Thanks, Henry, for your leadership. So the people that were involved in the immediate recovery efforts, I guess it was MEMA that was taking the lead on that, right?
That's right. MEMA, public works folks that, from the cities, they're dealing with the immediate needs. How do you clothe, feed, house these people? Whereas the commission was a private group. We had no authority, but I will say we had a lot of influence.
Yeah.
Because the governor invested in us.
What was the influx of people not from the coast like, in terms of folks that said, hey, I'm taking a week off work, I'm taking 2 weeks off work, I'm bringing a chainsaw and a diesel tank and just coming to help however I can?
Looking back at files, I read remarks from President Bush at a meeting on the coast, and one of the things he talked about was the spirit of Mississippians and how you see it in Mississippi, how the people are responding, how the people are working to help their friends, their neighbors, their people that they don't even know, but they came certainly from all over Mississippi. And to a credit to Americans, they really came from all over the country for months and months and months to help the coast rebuild.
Yeah, and that's a difficult thing, right? Because you want to accept people's graciousness and they're willing to help, but it's got to be a coordinated effort as opposed to just, this guy's got a chainsaw over there and this guy's got a skid steer over here, and where does everybody go? But they figured out a way to make it work.
They did, and it's a long process. I mean, in many ways, here we are 20 years later, and still some of the stuff is taking place, and it's stuff that started 20 years ago.
So let's talk on the other side of the break about some of the projects that happened that we are seeing the effect of today in terms of that. You've mentioned some of the communities. Let's talk about some of the practical application in the years since. 20th anniversary of landfall of Hurricane Katrina on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. We're back with you right after this. It's Mornings with Richard Cross.
From the Seabrook Paint.
Right. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Appreciate you being along for the ride and spending part of your Tuesday morning with us. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi. You can always connect with us on the C Spire text line. Agree, disagree, have a thought or a question, feel free. 601-879-4395. Visit C Spire online at cspire.com. C Spire, inspired by you. Interesting bridge. C Spire was one of those companies, a great Mississippi company, that was instrumental in a lot of the work that happened on the coast. And there was a window there where there was very, very little communication, but like so many other companies, they were the ones that immediately mobilized and then were there for a really long time in the aftermath, trying to help rebuild communication systems and get people back online.
Yeah. Yeah, C Spire, the Creekmore family, they're Mississippians, and I will say, there's a lot to be said for the Mississippi companies, because it's who they are.
Yeah.
And that was one of those times when you saw that with C Spire and what they did after the storm.
All right, so we've been talking about the Recovery Commission, of which you were the executive director, which meant kind of running day-to-day operations. It's actually an interesting dynamic. You and I were talking earlier about Jim Barksdale, and his reputation is that of a CEO and a company founder. But before he was that, he was an integral part of the growth of FedEx as chief operating officer, and that's kind of the role that you slid into, whereas he was in more of that CEO type position with the commission, right?
Yeah, he was the strategic leader, visionary, brainiac, genius. I mean, I will say I knew Jim Barksdale before, but I really got to know him, and we really bonded during this time, as you might expect. And I was floored with the opportunity to get to work for him. I found out so many great things about him. He's hugely generous guy, and that first meeting that we had on the coast, he came back and he was basically wanting to fund various things that the mayors had brought up. I was like, Jim, that's what the government's for. You're about to get on a slippery slope if you just start privately funding everything. But there is one story that's worth you talking about. What were some of the major successes of the coast, and one of which is the beautiful bridge that connects Biloxi and Ocean Springs. And there was a bit of a fight between A.J. Holloway and Connie Moran. A.J. was the mayor of Biloxi, Connie was the mayor of Ocean Springs, and Ocean Springs wanted, I'll say, a smaller, pretty bridge, and A.J., with all the casinos, wanted maximum lanes. Let's get the cars in.
He wanted a thoroughfare.
And Butch Brown, who was running MDOT, he was more with AJ on this, and he kept saying, we don't have money for bike pass and walking pass and all this sort of pretty stuff, and we're like $9 million short. And so there was all this back and forth, and we had a meeting in Biloxi City Hall, and there were a handful of folks there, including Butch Brown and the mayors, and Jim Barksdale was there, and there's this back and forth, and Butch is just saying, we don't have the money, and Jim Barksdale basically says, I'll tell you what, I'll fund the damn bridge and come up with the $9 million. Silence in the room, and everybody's kind of looking around, and I think AJ said, all right, why don't we kind of step aside and maybe take a moment. And they went to a separate room, and then within 10 minutes, Butch Brown came out and said, "We've found the money at MDOT. We're going to be able to build the bridge just like both mayors had agreed that they want." And so that's how that bridge ended up coming that way. And I will say, Barksdale wasn't bluffing. He was fed up with it. He could fix it. And Butch Brown learned a lesson. And I will say, A.J. Holloway came up to me after the meeting and goes, "Where do I get a Jim Barksdale? I need a Jim Barksdale.
Need one of those.
I need one of those."
So from that very first meeting that was 10 days, give or take, after landfall, within 2 weeks, to the commission's recommendations and ideas becoming reality, what was that timeline like?
It was quick, and it had to be. I mean, if you were going to have influence, you had to move quickly. And so we had set a goal to put out the commission's report and recommendations by the end of the year. And we published those, I'm going to say December 15th of 2005.
So 3.5 months.
Three and a half months after the storm. And one of the big ingredients into that was the charrette, this planning meeting that brought in all these planners and architects and such. And there is one funny story. Haley, as a politician, Richard, when he would give speeches, he would sometimes sound like a wonk or an accountant. It was a little bit dry, and never sort of that Bill Clinton emotion that connects with people. But after Katrina, I mean, Haley just melted every time he talked because it was so personal, and he spoke at the start of this charrette down on the coast, and he was in tears. I say tears, but I mean, he was emotional. That's
sure
overstating it. But I mean, it was a powerful speech, but there was a funny line in it where he said, "Now, I don't know. I've never heard of this word charrette. I don't know a lot of French." He said, "The only French I really know is bourbon and bonbons." So he, which is kind of classic Haley for anybody that knows him. And it was a lighthearted moment at a very serious time. But that commission really set the tone for recovery, and it set it very high. And I think that was really helpful to the mayors and county supervisors, that you had a lot of smart folks who were giving them ideas. Now it was all going to get decided by the local people. I mean, and private landowners. But it gave them a lot of ideas that I will say in places like Bay St. Louis, they really grabbed a hold of that. And if you go down to Bay St. Louis now and you see the beauty of what they have, and it's way beyond what I think it was, 20 plus years ago, pre-Katrina. It was a cool town before that, and now I think it's kind of off the charts.
Visiting with Henry Barbour, who was the executive director of the Recovery Commission following Hurricane Katrina. He was appointed to that spot by Haley Barbour, his uncle, who was the governor at the time. So many others were involved. Two kind of divergent thoughts here. One, you sometimes hear the mantra that from disaster comes opportunity. And that seems to me to be the opportunity that you were talking about that these cities had during the rebuilding time. And then the divergent thought is, in a time of crisis, the people who have been affected most in the most real way, they're left with so many questions, and it feels to me like they're looking for somebody to trust. And the biggest way to build that trust and have them get on board seems to be you got to show action, right? You've got to show that we're not just going to say this is what we're going to do, but you've got to quickly prove that that's what you are going to do. How did that play out?
Well, leadership really matters, particularly in a tragic situation like that. And I will say Haley really led. Governor Blanco over in Louisiana really struggled. The mayor of New Orleans really struggled. And it hurt the overall recovery because Louisiana was not well led. Haley was a real contrast to that. And I think in a lot of ways was the political figure who kind of came after Katrina stronger. The reality is if you looked at polling numbers for Haley after his first year and a half, wasn't a real certainty that he was going to be reelected. After Katrina, there wasn't any question that he was going to be reelected. And it's because he led with his heart, but he also led with real details, and he led with strength. Basically, he made sure people knew if right after the storm, if you were somewhere you weren't supposed to be, law enforcement was going to get you.
Yeah.
And he talked about we got to hitch up our britches and get to work, and those kinds of things that made a difference.
Yeah. I really appreciate your time this morning.
Yeah, brother.
Henry Barbour on Mornings with Richard Cross. All week long, we are remembering Hurricane Katrina, 20 years removed from that devastating storm on the Mississippi Gulf Coast that affected a long way inland as well. We'll wrap things up with you coming up next. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
From the Venable Glass.
Good morning, everybody.
Time to wake up.
Start your day right. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Great being with you this morning. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. What a fun conversation with Henry Barbour, who had a not just a front row seat, but a very forward-facing role in the immediate and the not so immediate aftermath to Hurricane Katrina. And Lance, I was in North Mississippi at the time. And obviously the effects of Katrina were nothing here like they were on the coast, but there was enough of rain and wind and power outage, even 300 miles north of the coast, that it gave you some sense of, good grief, if I'm this far away from where the storm hit, I don't know, it gave you a little more reality as to what it was like on the coast, even though you couldn't understand if you weren't there. But
it was in the metro area. That's where I was at the time. Power was out in our neighborhood for quite a while, a couple of weeks or so, and you kind of got to get creative. But my mother was on a catastrophe team with Allstate, and she worked Katrina and lived in a washed-out hotel, or you'd call it a motel, in downtown New Orleans. The whole first floor had been blown out, and debris stacked up 60 feet high at street corners, and worked all over the coast and over into Pensacola. And it was I went down and visited her a couple of times. It was the most amazing thing in the worst way you can imagine. And seeing the remnants, maybe a house left, everything around it absolutely destroyed. Mm-hmm. And she was on the back end of her career in insurance, and it was something she had always wanted to do. She had gone out to California during the earthquakes back in the late 80s, 90s. I think it was Northridge, whenever that one was. So she had a little experience
the
with
one that affected the World Series?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was 89.
Right. I couldn't remember if it was 89 or 90, but So she had a little experience in that, but fast forward many years later, 20 years ago, and that was a wake-up call for everyone. And I will echo what Mr. Barbour was saying. Haley Barbour showed the most amazing leadership and took charge when, as Henry said, we had weak leaders all around us, and you have this star that shows up and does the work. And it trickled down to people like my mother, who were out there trying to get checks and money to people and so they could buy food and, start finding some semblance of order in their lives again. But thank you, Haley Barbour.
C-Spire text line 601-879-4395. Derek in Greenwood says Greenwood got hammered. I mean, you're talking about Mississippi Delta, 150, 200 miles north of the coast. Hattiesburg was, an hour north of the coast, and extensive damage there. And there was a ripple effect across the entire state. And, even if you didn't have a direct connection to the coast, a family that was there, you had friends that were there, or, children of parents who had stayed. One of our dearest family friends' parents stayed in their home in Gulfport. Henry and I were talking a second ago about some of the conversations that he's had with Ricky Matthews, who, you had people who had stayed or maybe left and did not necessarily have property that was obliterated during Camille, and they thought, if I can last through Camille, I can last through anything. And he shared with me something that Ricky told him years ago. He said, I'm going to ride it out. And there was a point where Ricky's response was, what the hell am I doing? I have put my children in danger. This is really, really bad. They're saying it came right up 49. Yeah, it did. It was one of the, in one of the darkest moments in Mississippi's history. It turned into kind of a city on a hill in terms of the state and the way that it responded. And all of the stories are not positive. Anytime that you go through something like that, there's going to be stuff that doesn't work the way that it's supposed to. But there were so many people that did so much to try to help with the recovery effort, and did so much to help the coast become what it has become today and what it is continuing to become. I've joked with Ricky in the past about, man, I don't know if I've ever had a conversation with you about anything where Katrina didn't come up. And I think that just speaks to how much it has shaped everything that has happened in coastal Mississippi for the last 2 decades. We're going to continue to remember Katrina this week, as are the other shows on SuperTalk Mississippi. Going to continue to have these conversations. Appreciate you being along for the ride this morning. Always glad to have your comments, whether they are positive or negative or questions or statements. Appreciate very much the interaction with you. Thanks for being with us. For Lance, I'm Richard. That does it for us on this Tuesday morning. We're back with you tomorrow just after 6 a.m. Hope you have an outstanding Tuesday. This is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
But I don't let it get me down. 'Cause this fine old world, it keeps spinning around.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.